Though not a huge city, Philippi was a very dynamic place. It was founded in 356 BC by the father of Alexander the Great, Philip of Macedon, and that's where it got its name. It was located several miles inland from the Aegean Sea in Macedonia, and the famous Via Egnatia, or Egnatian Way, passed through the city, which was the major commercial and military highway of the ancient worlds, connecting Asia in the east with Rome in the west. As a result, there was a tremendous influx of business into Philippi, as well as customs and ideas from diverse cultures throughout the region. Not only that, but Philippi was a center of a great deal of Roman patriotism. The city had been granted the status of Ius Italicum, which meant that it was given special favors in the form of tax breaks and was regarded by Rome as though it were part of Italy itself. There were also a great many veterans of the Roman army who settled in Philippi when they retired, and the cult of the Roman Caesar was particularly strong among the city's residents. All of these factors shaped the cultural context of the first Christian community in Philippi that Paul addresses in his letter. The central theme of Philippians is unity. Apparently, there was growing discord in the Philippian church. If you read closely, you'll notice that Paul makes repeated reference to envy, rivalry, and conceit, and toward the end of the letter, he expressly names two women in the church who were evidently at the center of this strife, Euodia and Syntyche. Paul says that these women labored side by side with him in the gospel, and yet now they were fighting with each other and undermining the very work they had previously done. And so much of Paul's motivation in the epistle comes from this concern about this strife. This is clearest, I think, from the structure of the letter, which revolves around chapter 2. At the center of this chapter is a hymn that the early church seems to have sung in worship of Jesus. I'll let you read the passage on your own, but as you do, be sure to notice the verses right before it. Paul actually recalls to their mind this familiar hymn about the glory of Jesus as an example of how Christians are to relate to each other. In a word, they are to humble themselves as servants, and so to seek each other's best interest over their own. Note also the two passages that follow the hymn about Christ. In these passages, Paul sets forward the deeply sacrificial work of his partners, Timothy and Epaphroditus, on the Philippians' behalf, as a further example to them. The upshot of what Paul writes in Philippians 2 is that the strife and division plaguing the church in Philippi was caused by selfishness and a greater concern for one's own priorities than for the needs of other believers. And so the essence of Paul's plea to the divided Philippians is to recall the example of Christ, as well as the faithful ministers like Timothy and Epaphroditus, and to look not only to their own interests, but also to the interests of others. It is this idea more than any other, I think, that lies at the center of Paul's message. And we do well to reflect on this as we read his letter to the Philippians.